recreated this for the shop because it was sold out. And so this is the one product that's themed for the shop. And it's the royal card trick. Gut trick is like saying like bon appetit, good magic trick. As far as I know, one of the only tricks made in Berlin. Oh mein Gott, es tut mir leid. Okay, so this used to be outside on the street in the old location, and if you duck down a little bit, you can see what was sold. Different. It's a automat for different practical jokes. So you know, like a gum dispenser, but I'm not sure. Okay, so this is. I'll say it in English, Joseph Leichtmann and Leonia, and they had 4 daughters. So these are the 2 original owners of the first Zauberkönig, and their daughters Charlotte, Rosa, Melanie, and Leonie took over the business. If I'm correct in this, and check the website for accuracy, each of them was given a magic shop. Each of these daughters ran their own magic shop in different cities in Germany. So there was the Zauberkönig in Berlin, in Hamburg, in Cologne. I'm not sure about the last one. I think it's either 3 or 4 Zauberkönig shops, yeah. So this is Rosa and Janusz Bartel, if I'm saying this name right, in Hamburg, and the magic shop, from 1930s. You can see that. You know what I like about this? That there were stools for people to sit on. I believe personally all magic shops should have at least one place where people can sit and jam, because magic shops are a meeting place. I don't know if you can see up there. Mm-hmm. That's Gunther, and that is the grandfather of Karen, and he ran the shop from the 1970s onwards. And he was a really eccentric, interesting man. He was pretty intense. He did not believe in this policy that customer is king. He would take people outside of the shop, point to the sign, Magic King, and say, no, I'm the king. I'm the Magic King. So, but from what I heard, he was a wonderful performer. And I think he was maybe tough around the edges, but when he liked someone, he really brought them in, from the stories I've heard. But he would also take people's hands and look at the hands, also stories I've heard, and say, no, you're not ready. He would just look at your hands and tell you this. I would love to know what he was basing it on. It's like Berghain or something. You look at your face and say, no. One thing I think is critical to mention that's specific with the shop is that it always has had a strong female presence. And when you think of the history of magic, there's a lot of misogyny. And one of the beautiful things about this particular magic shop, it's owned by 2 women. How many magic shops do you know owned by 2 women, or even 1 woman, you know? And so I think that is a really critical part of the shop and one of the most beautiful aspects of it. We even do a show once a year on Women's Day that's called the Woman Magic Show, and no men are allowed to perform naturally, and it's a showcase of all the wonderful female magicians in Berlin. And if you notice, a lot of the owners of the shop were female, not throughout the entire history, but a good portion of it. This shop was run by women. I have a friend that prefers to always do a new act. So he'll, just kind of terrible, but because usually you get better by doing the same act over and over. But we did an act where he climbed, it was more of a theater piece. He climbed out of the stage as if he was entering an old attic. and there was a mannequin here, like a clothing mannequin, and he did a whole surreal dance with the mannequin. And he would take off her hand and do illusions like body illusions. And at the very end, he leaves, and the mannequin's all alone on stage, and she just slightly shifts her head. And we had to build a whole contraption under the stage where I'm pulling the thread just to make her head at the last second move. And I only think maybe 20% of the audience saw it, but it was still worth it. So I was first introduced to this shop from the grandchild, Kevin Gutzka, of one of the original owners, Gunther, and he brought me to this shop and convinced his sister to give me a job here because I knew something about magic. And I didn't know a word of German. And they told me, okay, we'll give you the job, but starting today, we will not speak any English at all. And so I started out just saying hello, guten Tag, und das hier, und das hier, und das hier, no, just with my hands to communicate with customers. And when there was a word that I didn't know, didn't understand, I would say, okay, can you write that down? Kannst du das bitte aufschreiben? And then I would go home and I had a whole packet of index cards with all the words for magic in German. Daumenspitze for thumb tip, and Seil, Zauberseil for rope. And that's how I learned German through magic. The shop was founded in 1884 in Berlin. And the original owner's last name was Leichtmann, and it's gone through a couple families since then. There's it's, I believe, from my research, the second oldest magic shop in the world. The first is El Rey de la Magia, which also, I believe, roughly translates to the King of Magic in Spanish. And we're called Zauberkönig, which means Magic King. So the first two oldest, or the two oldest magic shops both have the same name, which I think is interesting. Maybe there's a history there I'm not aware of. Zauberkönig is an institution in Berlin, and you'll often see it listed in a lot of tourist lists of the top 100 places you have to see in Berlin. But also, it's not just for tourists, it's really an institution for the neighborhood. I had, when I worked here, a lot of grandpas and grandmas would come to the shop and they turned back into their childhood selves because they would say, "Oh, I remember when I was a kid here, and we bought this little gum that had a mouse trap on it." I was like, "Oh yeah, we still have that. Look here," and they were so excited because usually they brought their grandchildren because they were kind of passing on the tradition. That was one of my favorite parts of working at the shop, is just hearing the stories from the many generations of people that grew up with this place. And even though the shop has moved locations, in the 70s it was on a street nearby. It's actually expanded. So it moved here, I think about five, maybe 6 years ago, and it expanded. They built a theater, which they didn't have in the past, and it's opened up a lot. And the clientele changed. The previous shop was a bit creepier. You would go in, it was dark, there was a lot of masks. We still have the masks, but in a more confined space. And when people told me stories about the original shop, I was there too, a couple times. Um, you would go in and it's kind of like a haunted house. There was very little space, and you go in, you see these creepy things. The street itself was kind of dangerous, and it had a real, I would say, like, I don't know if you've ever seen Afraid of the Dark, this Disney, I think it's Disney show, but it had this feel to it, which I like. This kind of possibilities of it, like you go in the shop, you see old artifacts, you see a crystal ball, you see some dust and some creepy masks, and you're a bit afraid, but there's a potential hidden behind the counter, you know? This location's a bit different. It's a little more family friendly, and so it caters more towards young kids coming in. They're not as daunted as they were by the old shop, and but that's also a good thing because I believe it's expanded the clientele. I think a big part of it is word of mouth. I think that because it's an institution and the shop itself is so old, I think that a lot of people, we have returning customers because they're just aware of it. And let's say they just know it exists. I think if it was a new shop that just opened, I think it would be much harder because it's such a kind of niche market, magic. I think the mere fact that it's lasted for so long is the reason that it's been able to survive all these years. Just it's kind of a cycle. The fact that it's been around so long also helps it exist, you know? I remember one of my favorites, it sounds silly, but one of my favorites is two young kids. I won't say their names, but they were 12 and 10 that really tried to steal from us. And they were very clever. And I thought, if you're going to steal from a magic shop, you have to have cojones, you know? And they were so clever about it. And I was like, these kids are born to be magicians. So the little one acted very naive. These kids were not naive. They're smart. And he would come and he would take a product and go, "Oh, what is this? Can you explain it to me?" And then of course his brother in the back is casually looking around, taking some mood rings and stuffing them in his pocket, And all the while they have like a secret language. They're looking at each other, checking, making sure, okay, he's distracted, this guy's distracted, and they actually became regulars. So, they would try every now and again to steal from the shop. We weren't the only one, they stole from everyone. But they would come in, and then eventually we started to show them tricks. At first, we're like, "Did you put something in your pocket?" And they go, "No." Are you sure?" "Yeah, But then we kind of hooked them in because then we showed them magic, and I think they appreciated that. And the older boy, the older brother, ended up coming almost, I would say, for a while, every day to learn. He was getting a free magic course because, to be honest, I don't think these kids were going to school. I think they were kind of off the grid. So we became his education in a way, teaching them absolutely useless things with cards and coins, but it was an outlet for them where they had no money. The reason they were stealing was because they just needed to survive. And this was something they could do that didn't cost anything really. And so that's one of my favorite moments of the magic is making these connections. Yeah. So we're in the Zauberkabinet, the magic cabinet, and it's an intimate theater. It fits when it's tight, about 40 people, maybe 45 if there's plenty of people standing, and it's really a part of the community. Again, like the shop itself, a lot of the people that come to see the shows are repeat patrons, let's say. They're the bar owner from across the street or one of the cafe owners will come and see shows. So it's really a theater for the community. And the beautiful thing, I'm always surprised, they come again and they come again and they see another show and another show. And we're famous for a particular show, which is called Magic Thursday, and it's an open stage of sorts. It's a variety show, and it keeps it interesting because it's not always the same performers. It's an outlet for, I would say, beginner intermediates also, as well as professionals to try out new material. And so there's an energy to that, you know, there's an excitement to it. I think if it was a standard show and it would always be the same two performers, it'd lose that appeal. But people come knowing that we don't even know what's going to happen pretty much. We collect the acts, but in some cases we haven't even seen their act until it's performed. We're famous for our ship, and from the grandmas to the young granddaughters, they love it. The kids love this, and I have a whole spiel that I say about the shit that we sell, and we're famous for it because this area is also known, especially earlier, that there was just dog shit everywhere around here, and so it's kind of like the essential souvenir from Neukölln to have a piece of shit. And we had people that use it for art pieces, and we have people that collect them. They have all of them, like Pokemon. So this is really essential to the shop. And they're still handmade by a family in Spain, which I love. So, and also a very old company. And I'll give you one more. So we're famous also for puzzles. We have a lot of different puzzles and riddles and things like that, and masks. We are also a costume shop in a way. Back in the day, all of the costumes were sewn by the aunt of the current owner. So they used to all be handmade here. For the most, the masks were purchased, of course, but many of the costumes. And we still, during Halloween, it's madhouse. We have we have some like some ghouls in the back or something. But yeah, people come here on Halloween, and for the whole month of Halloween, pretty much we're packed because people want to buy costumes here. Yeah. So Germany has a real history of tin toys, actually. I was just in Nuremberg in the toy museum, and that was the hot spot of tin toys in the whole world. And during, I believe it was during the war, the last war, that they exported a lot of their tin toys, and they weren't even sold so much in Germany because they needed to raise money. But Nuremberg had 100 different companies making all sorts of toys, including tin toys. And so, of course, these are nostalgic art products, right? So a lot of people come in and they want to see the robots, and we have the carousel that spins around. We have this Funkenrad, which is this sparkling. It creates sparks. This thing that you push, and a little monkey comes out, and it produces sparks. But the robots are beloved as well. Yeah. Uh, Focus on the customer, and kind of what I said before. The the real secret, I believe, is to find out what as much as you can about what they need, what they actually need. And sometimes that's being honest too. There will be kids that come into the shop and they'll say, "Hey, I want to buy tarantula or something," and you know they're not ready for it. And so sometimes, and not in a cruel way, but you have to say, "Oh, I don't know about that, but try this first, try loops or something." And so it's the more that you ask and listen to the customer, the more successful you will be in the shop. Because I believe if you're honest to them and you're not trying to sell them something, but if you're trying to fulfill what they actually need, they will come back. And also to be receptive to learn from them. I've learned from so many customers too. And it doesn't mean just magicians. Plenty of theater people come into the shop, and I also teach courses. And if you listen to the feedback they give you so much. It's this cliche of from your students, you will be taught. And it's so true. I've had wonderful ideas from children to adults, from different walks of life. And you might show someone a trick, explain it to them, and they say, "Oh, I'll do it this way." And it's beautiful, and it's way better than the small confines of how generally magicians think. Yeah.
I think that would be it.
Okay, I hope it was helpful.